Welcome back to my series Bleach for the Ladies. This is my retrospective look at the series rewatching as a 30-plus-year-old woman. If you missed part 1, go ahead and check it out. Today, we will be covering the second half of Season 1, episodes 11 through 20. There will be spoilers for Season 1, but I will try to keep any others to a minimum. Just like last time, feel free to skip around the video as you would like. My videos are divided into 4 parts that are listed on your screen. As always, thank you for watching. Rukia gets a notification on her phone that a holo is nearby. By the time her and Ichigo arrive, it's gone. We flash to a figure standing above them in a white coat and glasses with that anime glare. They head back to school where everyone is checking out their test rankings. Ichigo looks up at the #1 ranked student and he sees a name he doesn't recognize. Rukia gets another holo alert and blasts off again, dragging Ichigo along. He runs down the hall and bumps into the shoulder of a mysterious character. I wonder who that could be. Again, no holo. Maybe her phone is busted. They prepare to leave as they are approached by the same guy from earlier. He shouts, "Hey Kurosaki, you can see spirits, right?" Ichigo is like, who is this guy? Well, whoever he is, he senses another holo coming. Seconds after, Rukia gets the alert on her phone. This mysterious guy stretches out his arm, and a cross bracelet dangles from his wrist. A beam of blue light forms a blue bow. In a flash, he shoots an arrow at the holo and demolishes it in one hit. The mysterious stranger introduces himself. Yuru Ishida. For convenience, I'm going to call him Ishida. He says he's a Quincy, and he also hates Soul Reapers. Next day, Ichigo gets the scoop from Morihime. Ishida is a master seamster. He is in the school's handcrafting club. He has the sewing skills of a seasoned cosplayer. We catch him in an epic showdown with a torn stuffed animal. After school, Ichigo trails him, but Ishida is too wise and has some sort of sensing abilities. He knows that Ichigo is a substitute Soul Reaper and that Rukia is an actual Soul Reaper. In fact, he has noticed Ichigo's high spiritual pressure since the very day he entered school. He knows Ichigo became a Soul Reaper in May because soul ribbons for Soul Reapers are red instead of white like normal humans. So, after laying out all of that knowledge, Ishida challenges him to a duel. We will follow up on that in a bit. Meanwhile, Rukia and the shopkeeper are talking. He's someone I showed last time, but didn't mention his name. This is Kisuke Uehara. Rukia asks him about Quincy's. That's not something she has heard before. Uehara has, however, but he hasn't heard the name in at least 200 years. Back to the duel, Ishida uses holobait, something I don't think we ever see again in the series. But as expected, it lures out holos. He says whoever defeats the most holos in 24 hours wins. Now, okay, remember this. Holos attack people, as we have learned before. They tend to go after people with high spiritual pressure. And that's no good. So things are about to get a bit crazy. Okay, let's try to map this out a bit. I'm going to talk about different groups of people. Group 1, you have Ichigo and Ishida. Group 2, we have Orihime, Tatsuki, and Chizuru. Group 3, Chad and Corinne and friends. And Group 4, Rukia and Khan. Let's start with Group 3. We find Chad hanging out with some of his friends. Suddenly, there's smoke behind him, people thinking it was another explosion. Now, since the last shenanigans, Chad can see the outline of holos, kind of. They appear like liquid monsters to him. He decides to try and run to get the holo away from others. He ends up running the entire way to a ball field where we find Corinne and friends. If you don't remember, Corinne is one of Ichigo's sisters. I didn't mention it last time, but Corinne does have some abilities. She gets ill when she can feel a high level of spiritual pressure. She's been attacked by hollows twice already, so at this point, she can fully see them. She jumps on Chad's back, noticing he's throwing blind punches, and she guides him like Rukia did before. He lands a few hits before getting knocked down, but he gets up again. Well, first, something else happens. This is where we get a little bit of backstory on Chad. We see a flashback of him talking to his grandpa. Chad is half Mexican, and that's a crucial part of his story. He was always a strong kid, but that got him into a lot of fights. His grandpa tells him that he needs to find out why he has such strong fists. Using them to hurt others is not okay. That's when we get our first new power-up in the series. As Chad works through his emotions, we see him rise in a puff of smoke, and he has a new arm. Well, armor on his right arm. It seemingly appeared out of nowhere. But you know by the way the music hits that this is a hype moment. He uses that fist to defeat the Hollow, as he says his fists are that way so he can protect. Let's go back to Group 2. I didn't mention this before, but Tatsuki is a pretty involved side character. She's best friends with Orihime and grew up with Ichigo. She's actually the one that told us Ichigo's history with his mother. Well, Tatsuki can also see ghosts now. She was attacked by Orihime's brother as well that same night that Orihime was. Of course, another explosion happens, this time near the school, and their teacher makes them clean up the broken glass. Which, okay, why did the teacher think they broke an entire row of windows? That aside, Orihime gets a bad looming feeling and starts pushing her friends away. We see behind her an octopus-shaped hollow appearing on the building above them. The hollow begins shooting at them, hitting Chizuru with some green goop. Within moments, her arm becomes ultra strong, grabbing Orihime with force. This hollow can control people it hits with that green goop. A horde of zombified students surround them. Tatsuki comes flying and beats them up. Tatsuki would be so cool in a zombie movie. The zombies become overwhelming and eventually she gets pinned down. Orihime, seeing her friends both in a terrible situation, does some internal reflecting. Similar to Chad, she thinks about how she's gotten to this point. Losing her brother broke her, but her best friend Tatsuki made her life manageable. After being bullied for her hair, Tatsuki made it okay for Orihime to have long hair again. We see a glimpse of the hairpins that she had received from her brother. Suddenly, in a puff of smoke, yeah, they really like to use smoke effects in this show, 6 tiny little figures merge from the hairpin. They look like fairies, but they say they aren't. They also say no one can see them besides her and maybe Ichigo. Why Ichigo? Well, they say they exist because of him. How interesting. Now, you definitely need a manual to explain Orihime's powers, but let's keep it simple for now. These beings can attack, defend, and heal using rejection. I wish that was my power. She can create a shield to reject attacks from behind it, can reject injuries from within it, basically reversing damage, and she can attack by rejecting their existence. We will learn more about it later in the series. Of course, Orihime wins her battle with her newfound power and also falls over. I mean, wouldn't you be exhausted after that too? We pan over to the side, and Uehara and crew are carrying Chad. They snatch up Orihime too. Let's go to Group 4 real quick. We only get a little glimpse of them. Rukia and Kon run into Ishida, who comments to himself that this is way more hollows than expected. Like a suspicious amount of hollows for such small hollow bait. Also, Rukia has like 0 powers now. She's really trying her best, but she's definitely going through it. Okay, let's take a break from the fights. We're gonna go back to that Quincy explanation. Uehara explains to Rukia that they were another group that fought hollows, except they differ in one way. They don't purify hollow souls. This caused disagreements between them and Soul Reapers, as Soul Reapers keep a balance of souls. If souls are destroyed, then the world is destroyed too. So the Quincy's were extinguished by the Soul Reapers. But that's not why Ishida hates Soul Reapers. He said it's because they didn't help his grandpa, who was also Quincy, when he was murdered by hollows. That's why he holds a grudge. Ichigo and Ishida have a bro moment, sharing their trauma as they are surrounded by a massive group of hollows. Then the sky rips open to reveal an even bigger hollow. This is the Manos Grande, a huge hollow that Rukia has only ever read about. Uehara's squad shows up and wipes out the small fry and sends Ichigo and Ishida off to deal with the big guy. He also puts Rukia in a bind spell to stay back and watch. Also watching are Chad and Orihime, but from a bit further away. Before arriving, Uehara gave them the lowdown on everything going on. So they battle with one of the wildest strategies. Ichigo has an uncontrollable amount of spiritual pressure, and Ishida has great aim. They create a super weapon between them, but they're interrupted by a massive beam launching from the Manos Grande. Ichigo bolts in as he does and stops the beam by swinging the sword and shooting spiritual pressure right up the monster. The Manos Grande backs up into the sky like a Roomba, and the sky is restored. Fight over. Or is it? Well, apparently Ichigo fought so hard that he's about to explode. His body can't take all the energy that surged. Ishida makes contact trying to absorb the energy and releasing it through his arrows. They're both exhausted, but they turn out okay. They realize they need each other to be rivals. So with everything fine and good and everyone safe, let's switch our focus a bit. Let's talk about Rukia. With the Manos Grande defeated, we know that news is going to hit the Soul Society. She knows that something bad is coming for her. We see 2 figures hanging out in the sky at the end of one of our episodes. She runs off, leaving a note behind in Ichigo's room, and is easily caught by a red-haired Soul Reaper. We can tell by his hair that he will be important. She didn't even realize he was lurking above her until she could hear his voice. Renji Abarai, she says. This is someone she is very familiar with. Renji is almost shocked by how weak Rukia has become. She has become too human, he says. She lost her powers and has been stuck in a gagai. Remember that word from last time? Renji swings his sword at her. She dodges. He asks, "Where is the human that took all of your powers?" But she won't budge. He corners her until a familiar figure appears. Ishida. He's just walking by, claiming to be coming from a 24-hour sewing store. Oh, also, Mr. Boys Over Flowers is over there. We'll get to him. Ichigo finally finds the note after unrestraining Kon from behind the toilet. The note needs decoded. They figure it out. He tries to chase Kon down to get his mod soul temporarily in his body, but that doesn't work. So Uehara pops up in his window and knocks his soul out like a cue ball. By the time Ichigo arrives, Ishida is already down for the count. We got a battle. Renji starts asking them questions. What squad are you from? Why is your sword so big? He puts together the pieces eventually and finds out that this is the human that took Rukia's powers. They squabble, but Renji is on another level. Ichigo is somewhat keeping up until he gets a wound in his shoulder. They chat a little, as you do in battle. Renji informs Ichigo how dumb he is for revealing himself. Also, basically, him and Rukia are pretty much toast. He mocks him, says, "You can't even land a scratch in me," which Ichigo does. But this is where we get our first Zanpakuto reveal. Every sword has a name, and Renji's sword's name is Zabimaru. We will learn about Zanpakutos in a little bit. Renji's sword transforms into an extending blade with multiple notches. It doesn't take long until he overpowers Ichigo and creates a rather painful wound. His sword kind of looks like a saw contraption. As Renji is about to leave his final strike, Rukia jumps on him, holding him back. This gives Ichigo just enough time to get his adrenaline pumping. Like a beast, he comes back full power. That wound only made him angrier. Even badly wounded, he is leveling up to Renji. He can keep up with his speed and swings his massive sword like crazy. It's almost frightening. He even manages to cut Renji's cool shades in half. As he's about to destroy Renji, he lands and his sword blade is missing. Now, Renji didn't do it. Ichigo didn't see what happened. So, what's going on? Well, Mr. Boys Over Flowers in the corner is holding Ichigo's blade. Ichigo, shocked, looks at him and he just drops it like it's hot. Mr. Boys Over Flowers barely touches the handle of his sword and in one of the coolest shots in anime, just strolls on by Ichigo. And Ichigo is just KO'd. So now I'll actually introduce him. Rukia yells out, "Brother," to the sky. This is Byakuya Kuchiki, a captain and Rukia's adoptive brother. He's royalty, he's glam, and his nickname will make sense later. Now, of course, Ichigo is still technically alive. Rukia runs over concerned for Ichigo, but is stopped by Renji. She's willing to risk an extended sentencing of 20 more years just to check in on him. And Byakuya says something that it hits. He says, "Rukia, I understand. You're willing to risk your sentencing for this kid. I get it. He looks like him." What? Him who? As Rukia, Renji, and Byakuya head towards the opening gate to the Soul Society, Ichigo grabs Byakuya's Shihakusho. He does not know when to stop. Rukia steps in and kicks his hand away. She says, "How dare you grab my brother like that?" She says she has seen the error of her ways and will atone for her sins. Ichigo doesn't know how to take this, but she definitely just saved him. Rukia tells him to not go after her, or she will never forgive him. And as far as we know, Ichigo is being left to pass in this moment. They walk through the gate, and it starts raining. I told you the rain would come back. As the rain falls and Ichigo feels his life seep away, he is saved by, who guessed it, Uehara. Later, Ichigo wakes up in a rather interesting way. Uehara says Ichigo can save Rukia, but he has to train there for 10 days. Ichigo presses X to doubt, but he's too weak to really go anywhere, so he accepts it. We do find out that there is a 1-month waiting period before Rukia will be executed. Just the typical way the Soul Society does it. So let the training begin. Everyone is training now, not just Ichigo. Ichigo is thrown into a pit, so that's super fun. Orihime and Chad and Ishida are all training on their own as well. They also heard about what's happening to Rukia and want to save her. Also, this cat. Remember this cat. Chad and Ishida and Ichigo are super freaked out that it can talk. But this cat's gonna matter later. So, Ichigo's training. Ichigo has the choice to either become a Hollow or a Soul Reaper. Well, not really a choice. That's what's gonna happen. He is bound with a level 99 Keto spell. He has to climb up this massive pit before his soul chain is devoured. As Ichigo transforms, his mind gets transported to a new place. A figure appears before him. Ichigo and the audience can't hear the name. He has to find the power within himself. Up until now, his Soul Reaper powers were borrowed from Rukia, so he has to awaken his own. As we see him transforming into a full-blown Hollow, there are massive explosions, fireworks, chaos everywhere. We think this is it, but Ichigo launches to the surface with both a Shihakasho and a Hollow Mask. Who won? He unsheaths his broken sword, yeah, there's still no blade there, and cracks the Hollow Mask. Ichigo is a Soul Reaper again. Yay! Now, Yohara moves him on to the next training. If Ichigo can knock off his hat, then he wins. This is where we get our second Zanpakuto reveal of the series, Benihime. Ichigo remembers what Renji says, how each Zanpakuto has a name. That figure from earlier is whispering in his ear. After listening in, Ichigo yells out, Zangetsu. The number one theme starts playing, crowd going wild, and we are hype. Ichigo launches an attack so hard, Yohara has to block it. His hat goes floating off in the distance. Also, he leaves a massive crater. That's where we're leaving everyone for right now, until they get prepared to go through the gate to the Soul Society. They re-meet up as Yohara opens the gate. And he tells them, by the way, you need to get through it in 4 minutes or you're trapped between the Soul Society and the human world forever. No big deal. One more thing I want to end off this with. We do get a little bit of a snippet of the Soul Society. Rukia is in jail. Renji stops by to see her. We get the sense they are actually friends. Renji is convinced her sentence will be lightened. Rukia is not so sure. While Byakuya is her brother, he is very strict on rules. What the court decides, he will follow through. And yeah, that's exactly what has happened so far. He confirms her execution, showing very little emotion. We briefly see 2 new characters, also with cool hair, so you know they'll matter. But let's stop here. And that finishes season 1. So what are the Bleach words we are going over today? I think I changed my mind. We're just going to call this segment Bleach words. Let me know if you have any suggestions. So let's go over Quincy. A Quincy, as far as we know, is a group of humans that have spiritual pressure to defeat hollows, and they do not purify their souls. Currently, we know they were mostly eradicated 200 years ago, but we know at least Ishida is still around. Next, let's talk Zanpakuto. A Zanpakuto. A Zanpakuto is a sword used by Soul Reapers that can transform into different types of weapons. Each one has its own name. Next season, we're going to spend a lot of time learning about Zanpakutos. What is a Shihakasho? So that is simply the uniform worn by a Soul Reaper. It kind of looks like a robe. But Shihakasho is really, really fun to say. Another word we hear a lot through the series is spiritual energy or spiritual pressure. It's kind of a hard concept to really talk about, but think of it as the stored energy within a soul. Everyone has different levels of it. It kind of depends throughout the series. Ichigo is someone who has a lot of spiritual energy. We might find out why later. Quincy's also have that as well. I think any human has spiritual pressure at varying levels. And lastly, a soul ribbon. A soul ribbon is kind of a visual of a soul. We have white ribbons for humans, we have red ribbons for soul reapers. It's not brought up a whole lot after the first season or two, at least that I can remember. But for right now, I think it's important to know. And those are the words we're going over today. So first off, I forgot how much happened in the first season. I got a little bit long-winded with my review, just because everything feels so important, and a lot of it really is. Yeah, I don't know how I forgot so much detail. Let's talk about Ishida a bit. He was a character I don't think I originally cared for much, but seeing this again, I think I might have been a little bit too harsh on him. His motivations make a lot of sense, and he is willing to cooperate pretty quickly, at least on his own terms. I know he can be seen as a pretty typical arch rival for Ichigo, but getting another look at it, I think there is a little bit more nuance to his character that I had missed early on. He's not as emotionless as I remember, and he does have a full-on breakdown thinking about his grandfather, and willing to help his friends. Orihime also gets a bad rap pretty often for being kind of airheaded, but she has a lot of profound things to say in the series, particularly when talking to Ichigo. I definitely thought the training sequences also lasted longer, but I'm happy they got covered so quickly. In general, those tend to be most meh for me. This is something else that I think watching it like the second time helps improve it. Their conversations matter more. I actually care about the details. They do help create things for bigger picture stuff later. I also forgot how much I love the introduction of Byakuya and Renji. It's done in a super cool way. They're just lurking in the sky. We can tell they're dangerous. It's nice and mysterious. Slight spoiler here, but they're two of my favorite characters throughout the series. I have a lot of favorite characters, but they're definitely top 10 somewhere. It was hard to watch this without that bias. Luckily, we see they aren't really villains, even by episode 19-ish. So, a fun memory for me. Does anyone remember the song Down by Jay Sean and Lil Wayne? To this day, I love the song anytime it comes on. But back when I watched a lot of music videos on YouTube, there's a part where there's little blue particles in the air and he makes an arrow. It's obviously a Cupid reference, but I always joke to myself that he was a Quincy because it looks like a Quincy arrow. If you also haven't caught on by the Boys Over Flowers reference, I'm big into K-dramas and K-pop. Junsu has a song that features a rapper named Quincy, so I always laugh to myself about that as well. It's called Incredible. It is an incredible song. I do have one lowlight that I need to mention. It's something I was dreading a bit when considering a rewatch. I do not like certain anime tropes, especially around women. This type of thing actually kept me away from a lot of other animes. Episode 15 is where it happens. The first half is a little bit rough. Too many tropey things together. I know a lot of it is also from the manga and it's just like a thing, but I bring it up because I think it tends to scare a lot of new people away from anime in general, especially women or girls. To me, that's probably the hardest part of rewatching not just this series, but any anime series. It feels like that episode, you're putting the three worst people you know in a room together. Yeah, that's probably my least favorite part so far. Overall, the first season still holds up for me. I'm overly excited for what is coming next. This whole society arc is a favorite of a lot of Bleach and anime fans in general, and it's for good reason. I'm not sure if it's my favorite arc or not, at least in original Bleach, but I'm excited to see on a second watch if it really lives up to where it sits in my head. So, why watch Bleach? The second half of the first season introduces more stakes in the human world. We learn about more super abilities forming from personal traumas. While not everyone is super, strengths are coming out in other ways. Like how Tatsuki can use her fighting skills to ward off enemies, or Corinne can be brave and be the eyes for someone stronger. Every character's powers are related to someone they care about, be it family or friends, or what it takes to protect those we hold dear. We can find heroes even in the smallest towns. We also learn more about other worlds that exist in the beyond. While we only get a glimpse, we can tell that things are not as simple as they seem. More people are here from that world, which makes us start to question those that have become allies. Uehara, for example, seems to know much more than he is leading on. It reminds us, while trusting others is important, to sometimes still be weary. Is he a true ally, or does he have his own motivations? We don't know at this point. We know we are headed to the Soul Society and we have a tight deadline. Are things what they seem? And the last reason to watch Bleach Season 1. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Uehara. The guy is a mystery, but like a cool mystery. He's smart, got a cool fashion sense, his best friend is a cat, he owns a store, we like entrepreneurs here, and he's low-key funny in like a sarcastic way. We are just getting to know him, but he gets my approval. 10 out of 10, best small shopkeeper in Karakura Town. And that's it. Thank you if you watched this video, I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Still working on improving, and I am getting help editing from my brother, so kudos to him for lots of the memes. I'll take your feedback and I will try my best to improve. Until next time, see you later.